Hello and welcome. My name is Ahmad and I'm going to be going over my trading card game I have been working on for more than a year and a half now, going over its rules and breaking down simple scenarios and where the game will be played. The next video I'll be uploading, I'll be going over the cards that I have made for the game, and hopefully we can get a recording of a playthrough of a battle. So without further ado, I introduce to you Warriors. What is Warriors? It's a trading card game that allows the player to go to the battlefield as themselves, their own warrior. Relying only on the skills they have and the tools that they brought to the battle, Warriors is a game that puts true fighters to the test. Warriors is the only trading card game in the world that allows the player to take the perspective of the fighter on the battlefield, where battling leads to consequences in-world and the world reacts. In a world full of fighters who want to claim the right to call themselves champion of warriors, who will. I would very much like, once I'm able to get the beta started and the alpha then the beta, getting tournaments where people can win special prizes, or warriors can win special prizes. All this is in the works, and with the first starter decks out, I hope many people will play and share their experiences. How do I get started? Simple. You get a starter deck, and understanding the rules, you'll be able to play the game. Starter decks will be out soon, hopefully before the end of the year. Each warrior lives and travels along the many countries of the planet on Misiton, where fairies whisper secrets to magicians, dragons fly high, giants roam free, the seas fill with treasure, and a world of people who seek power, love, friendship, and glory. You, as the warrior, are the one who lives in Misiton, and that is where all of this is possible. When warriors come across one another, they may converse, may even befriend each other, though that does not stop them from fighting to see what the other is made of, and should either one not feel so friendly, it's a fight all the same. When warriors battle, the peace of Misiton is disturbed. A natural world event might be triggered, mid-battle for all fighters to go up against. The battle may come to a closer end, or it may help further it. No one knows why the world reacts so, but it will. And one warrior to claim victory. To go over the game rules, we have broken them down into 3 parts. Part 1, you the warrior. Part 2, the battlefield. And 3, your tools and resources. Part 1, 2, and 3 have been broken down even further. We'll go over the warrior, agility, counter attacks, damage, critical hits, and turn flow in part 1. Your tome, your shelf, the void, the Eather, as well as world events, natural world events, will be gone over in part 2, the battlefield. And Kare, special magic, elemental, my apologies. Kare, light Kare, dark Kare, special Kare, spiritual magic, elemental magic, action and attacks, as well as objects, will be gone over in part 3, your tools and resources. You the warrior. Every player of the game is a warrior. Each warrior starts their battle with 100 points of health, as well as 20 points of agility. Each warrior has 2 arms, hands, legs, and feet. Each warrior has 1 torso and 1 head. No more, no less, no matter what else is true outside the game. At the start of each battle, warriors draw 6 cards from their tomes. Then they decide who shall go first, either by a coin flip, rock, paper, scissors, or simply agreeing. A battle between warriors starts at 2, but can be more. Why do I describe the body of the warrior? Since you are playing as one person and taking the perspective of the warrior and your own perspective, it is important to dictate what resources you have and you can use. If you have more than one head, you would need more than one helmet. If you have more than two hands, you can hold more than two things, or one thing in each hand. Describing your body this way will help in setting up for the game, so that no one is confused about how much someone can carry and so on. Battles between warriors start at 2, as in 1v1, but can be 2v1, 3v1, 2v2, and so on, and there is no limit to how many warriors can battle in one battle or how many people can take sides. Agility. Every warrior starts the battle with their agility at 20, represented by 20-sided dice. If a warrior's agility is at 20 during battle, then there are little obstacles in their way to victory. The agility is brought up and down. The way agility is brought up and down is simple. The equipment a warrior uses in battle. Every object card will convey just how much agility it takes to carry it during battle. While raising a warrior's agility is as simple as sending an in-use object to the shelf, agility determines whether or not you can evade taking damage from an attack by countering with one of your own. Here we're using game terms such as shelf, objects, in-use, agility. All these will be described further, but to put it simply, the shelf is a part of the battlefield, just like your tome or your deck. Objects are a type of cards, and here we have just described agility. Now, what do I mean by there'll be as little obstacles in your way to victory if your agility is at 20? I'll go over that right now. If your agility falls to or below 15, you cannot counterattack during your turn. If your agility falls to or below 9, you cannot counterattack during your opponent's turn. If your agility falls to 0, then you must remove an object from the battlefield, or every attack that you make must be a critical hit or a miss. If your agility would fall below 0, then you must remove an object until it is at least 0. So, first, what do I mean by counter attack on your own turn? If you should attack your opponent can counter. If they counter with an attack of their own, successfully there is attack coming at you. You can either block, if you can block, or take the damage to your health, or counterattack their counter. We'll go over counterattacks more, but you cannot counter without the agility needed. And if it is between 20 and 16, you can counter on your turn. If your agility is at 9 or lower, you cannot counter on your turn, even your opponent's turn. So you cannot counter at all. And if your agility is at 0, it can remain on 0, but every attack that you do must be a critical hit. Critical hits will be described some more in a little bit, but just know that every single attack has the chance of being a critical attack. And it is just that, a chance. If you miss your chance at a critical hit, you miss the attack completely. So if your agility is at 0, it's either you critically attack or you don't attack at all. If your agility would fall below 0, then you must remove one or more objects from the battlefield until it is at least 0. Counterattacks can only take place if there is an attack to counter. You cannot counterattack your opponent if they have done nothing to attack. A warrior who wishes to successfully counterattack must clearly announce and unleash an attack of their own in response to the one coming at them. Just like how you will have to clearly announce you're attacking, you will have to clearly announce that you are countering if there's one coming at you. The damage output of the counterattack must be greater than the attack they wish to counter. If there is a strike coming at you for 5 damage, you must at least strike back with 6 damage, sending 1 point of damage at your opponent. If it does not exceed by at least 1, if your counter is not at least 1 point of damage greater than the damage coming at you, it is not a counterattack. You can use an attack to block another attack. If there's 5 damage coming at you and you send a damage of 3 back, well, you're just taking 2 damage that is coming at you, as long as you have the resources to send such an attack. But for it to be at a counter attack, you must be able to send damage back at your opponent, and the only way to do that is by canceling their attack completely and sending some back. The attack that the warrior countered is subtracted from the counter attack they unleashed. We just went over this. If a warrior attacks successfully or not, If a warrior counterattacks successfully or not, their agility is temporarily brought down by 1 point until their next turn. So, if you counterattack successfully, your agility goes down by 1. And if you do so again, it's again brought down by 1. But if you do not successfully counterattack, let's say bring back the scenario of the 5 coming at you and you send 3, your agility is still brought down by 1 until your next turn, where all 1 point deductions of the agility will be taken off. During a battle, damage dealt refers to health points. If successful or if damage is successful, refers to health damage, not damage to objects. Objects can and do absorb damage, but that is not referred to as successful damage. All attacks have a chance at making a critical hit. If a warrior intends to take a chance at a critical hit, they must clearly announce it. A 10-sided dice is then rolled. The number needed to land the critical hit is the number that the dice must land on. That number is indicated on each attack card. The way the attack cards, both magical and non-magical attacks, are structured, they have 3 ovals above the text box. I will have the PDFs of the cards uploaded soon in another video, but until all that is finished, please bear with me. There are 3 ovals on each card. The one on the right, they are in a line. The one on the right will dictate the critical hit number needed, and the one on the left will tell you more about the type of card. It will tell you the type of card it is, while the one on the center will simply have the card sigil there. If it's a fire element, if it's a sword, if it's an object card, so on. But the ones that will give you more information about the card's effects will be on the right and left. If the dice lands on the right number, the attack is a critical hit, and the damage output is doubled. So if the dice does not land on that number, the attack misses and it is taken off the battlefield. Critical hits, if successful, allow you to deal double the damage written on the card. To be successful, every card will have a number in their critical hit slot. From 0 to 9, 10-sided dice do not go from 1 to 10. They go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, the critical hit slot will have the number you need to roll on. And if you land on that number, your damage output is doubled. If you do not, you miss the attack and you send it off the battlefield onto the shelf. Or, as the card states. Just as the warrior has a chance at a critical hit with their attacks, they also have a chance at a critical hit with any weapon they might have in hand. They must clearly announce that they wish to roll for a chance at a critical hit. Should they land on the number chosen by the card, then the base damage dealt and or absorbed doubles for the interaction taking place. Though, should the dice not land on the right number, their attack misses. Unlike taking a chance on an attack, their object cards remain where they are. So just like critical hits with attacks, you have a chance to double your output with your sword or your wand or your axe. They come with base damage, and that damage can be amplified with a critical. But if you miss, you don't attack that turn. And if you miss, your object card remains where it is. A warrior could, if they so wish, take a chance on their weapon as well as their attack that they wish to use. So you can do a critical hit chance on your weapon. Let's say your sword does damage of 3, and your attack, say damage of 5. You use your base damage of your sword, it will always do that damage, unless you miss. And you take a chance. You make it, it's a critical hit. Now your sword for this turn will do 6 damage for this strike. Your other attack, which does 5 damage, you do a critical chance, and you land on the right number, you get 5 more damage added to it. Now you can do an output of damage of 16 in this one attack, because you did 2 successful critical hit chances. But if you miss on either one, the whole attack is wasted. And you must announce that if you wish to do a critical chance on 2 things, you must announce that you can't do it on one, then the other one if it's successful. You must announce your attack completely and then take your chance if you wish to, because your opponent must take all of it into account when they're building up their block or their strategy. Just like spells and action cards have a critical hit, so do most objects. And when a warrior chooses to take a chance on a critical hit, if they should make it, whatever the object would have done is doubled. If they should land on the right number, they miss what they were trying to do with no redos. Why do I bring this up? Just like swords can double their output damage, shields can double their absorb damage if you land on the right number. If you don't, you only get one chance. You cannot redo. Let us now go over turn flow. The turn is broken up into 6 parts. The focus, which is before your draw focus. Draw focus, where you draw 1 card every turn. The first settling, where you play care and or object cards. The action focus, where you play spells or action cards. The second settling, playing care and or object cards. And the end focus, the end of your turn. For all first turns, there is no action focus. So, if it's 1v1, you both go through your first turns and you do not do any action, playing any attacks. If it's more than 1v1, it is the same. During the battle, each warrior will have a coin. That coin can be a penny, a quarter, a nickel, a dime, a $50, a golden dollar, or any coin as long as there's a heads and tails, even a token coin or a cardboard. No, let's omit cardboard coins. It must be metal. That coin remains on the table with the head side facing up. Once per turn and only once, Once per battle, and only once, a warrior can flip that coin. Should that coin land on tails, they then draw 2 cards at their draw focus. A flip is only game legal if and only if it is flipped with one hand, caught with that same hand, and immediately placed on the back side of the warrior's other hand. That's the side of the coin that is shown facing up is the side it has landed on. And before the warrior flips, they must announce what they wish the coin to land on, heads or tails. After the coin has been flipped, whether or not it landed on tails for the warrior or not, it'll be placed back on the mat with the tail side facing up. It starts with heads facing up to indicate that you haven't yet flipped your coin for your second draw. And after you have, you put it on the heads facing, tails facing up to indicate that you have. The battlefield. On the battlefield will be your tome. That is your deck of cards. In a warrior's tome, there will be spells, objects, action, and care cards. Minimum number of cards per tome is 40, maximum is 75. If a warrior wishes to have more than one of the same card, they may, up to 3. The tome minimum and maximum is up for change if needed. I still have not gone into the alpha phase and testing, as well as the maximum number of cards you can have of the same cards. The 3 is also up to change if needed and found to be better for the game during the testing. When a warrior has played their cards, they are sent to the shelf after use. When a card is on the shelf, they can still be played and used, but at double the care cost. Unlike the warrior's tome, they can pick and choose what to take as well as how much they like. Cards on the shelf must be played at the card type's appropriate time. If and when a card is taken from the shelf, it must be played immediately. It cannot go back into the hand of the warrior or their tome, or for that matter, back to the shelf once it has been taken off the shelf, unless a card otherwise dictates. Now, when playing cards off the shelf, as long as you have the resources, being the care, you can take as much or all the cards from the shelf and put them onto the battlefield, as long as it's the card's appropriate time. And once a card has been taken from the shelf and has been played and reached the point where it would have otherwise gone back to the shelf, it is instead sent to the void. Just as each warrior has an opportunity to counter-attack when their opponent attacks them, they can choose to play a counter-attack from their shelf, assuming they have the resources. The void. When a card reaches the void, there is no return for it, unless otherwise stated by a card. And when a card has been sent to the void, the total care cost of that card is automatically sent to the Eather. Its total care cost is written on the card itself, not whatever cost to play that turn, and there are no exceptions whatsoever. If a card is sent to the void, its care cost is sent to the Eather. That is the way the game goes. The care cost is not what it costs to play the card at the time, it is what is written on the card. Certain spells might make spells cost less. Certain spells might make spells cost more care or actions. The care cost is the cost of care that is written and dictated on each card. The Eather. Once a card is sent to the void pile, the care cost of that card is sent to the Eather, as we just stated. Once the total care in the Eather is at 12, represented by a 12-sided dice. The Aether is set back to 0, but if the Aether would have gone over 12 Kare, the remaining Kare is carried over and the Aether is set as such. And once the Aether reaches 12 Kare, a natural event is triggered. Each warrior in every battle have their own shelf pile, void pile, and natural event pile, though there is only one Aether per battle, no matter how many warriors are battling at a time. Natural world events are triggered in a battle when the Aether has reached its limit. Each warrior comes into battle with their tome, as well as 5 natural event cards of their choice. The first natural event that takes place is off the top of the natural event pile, brought by the person who went second in the battle, or, if there is more than 1v1, the last person to take their turn before the next round starts. From then, the natural events that are triggered take turns going clockwise from the first natural event that triggered. A natural event affects all players and could be good or bad for them. When a natural event is triggered, it is a turn for all warriors, an attack phase for all warriors. The opponent they must respond to is the natural event itself. After triggering, natural events go to the bottom of their piles to be reused should the opportunity arise. One thing I'd like to go over when going over the Aether and other things, the Aether and the agility and critical hits, they all dictate that you should use dice. Your health will start at 100 and it will go up or it will go down, kept track by pen and paper or your phone or whatever you're using to keep track of it. You could keep track of the Aether total as well as your agility, also pen and paper, or however you're going to do it. The way that I would prefer is by dice. That is why it's integrated into the game, but it is not necessary. The only thing necessary that needs dice is critical hits. Critical hits must be rolled for, otherwise it is not a legal critical hit and you cannot do it. Part 3. Your tools and resources. Kare is magical and physical energy potential that is used during a battle between warriors. Kare cards are drawn from each warrior's tome or player deck and placed on the battlefield to be used to cast spells and or launch attacks. Each warrior cannot play more than 2 Kare per turn. There are 4 different types of Kare: neutral Kare, light Kare, dark Kare, special Kare. And, it is not stated here but I stated it before, there are 2 chances to play Kare during your first settling and your second settling. Light Kare is magical and physical energy potential that is used to cast spiritual magic. Spiritual magic spells that require light Kare tend to be an interfering magic. Light and dark Kare cannot be substituted for neutral Kare. Dark Kare is magical and physical energy potential that is used to cast spiritual magic. Spiritual magic spells that require dark Kare tend to be a destructive magic. As stated before, dark Kare cannot be substituted for neutral Kare, just as light Kare cannot be. Special Kare. Special Kare appears similar to neutral Kare, but for the sigil of the elemental nature, it amplifies. If you have special Kare on the battlefield and you use it, that or more special Kare should you have more, if you use that special Kare to cast an elemental spell that shares the sigil of the elemental nature on the special Kare, your spell will be amplified as dictated by the special Kare. Special Kare can be used interchangeably with Kare, though there are no added effects if it is used to cast spiritual magic or elemental magic spells that do not share the nature type of the Special Kare card. Special Kare cannot be light or dark, since it is of a different nature. Spiritual magic spells, simply put, is all magic that does not rely on an element of nature to cast. Rather, it pulls from the essence of the caster. Spiritual magic can heal, harm, cast illusions, and help with gaining resources, causing mischief, havoc, or delight. Spiritual magic, more often than not, requires light or dark Kare, as well as neutral Kare. Elemental magic spells can be used by all warriors, though if they use it is up to them. Elemental magic just needs care and knowledge of the spells a warrior intends to cast. There are 6 elements of nature that are used in battle: rubble, water, ice, fire, wind, and lightning. Each with their own strengths and drawbacks. Rubble spells tend to cost more Kare to cast, but yield devastating effects. It is not commonly used, which has led to a lack of variety in spells. Nonetheless, it is useful in times of desperation. Water spells tend to go toward lower Kare cost, but that does not mean it isn't something without power. The biggest drawback of water spells is that it doesn't perform when both hands aren't free. Ice spells cost less Kare than water spells and allow for more devastating spells, though mobility is much harder to attain while casting ice magic, but with another advantage of more free hand spells. Fire spells are a middle ground for elemental magic, low and high Kare costs with varying effects. Its drawbacks lay with not allowing for great defense. Wind spells cost about as much as water spells, and they tend to rely more than just Kare cost, while also doing more, some effects lasting many turns. Lightning spells cost the most of all elemental magic, in almost every way, sometimes even needing light or dark Kare. The biggest drawback of this element of nature is its resource dependence. Action and attack cards are structured very similar to elemental magic, and just like certain spells belong to specific element types of nature, certain attacks belong to weapon types. Though defense is not an attack, defense cards still fall under action cards. Object cards are the only type of cards that don't rely on Kare to be cast from the hand or shelf. Though they cost no Kare to summon during battle, you can only place one object card from your hand or shelf per turn. You cannot summon more per turn. Only one object card can be played per turn and or removed per turn. Whether it has been removed intentionally or not does not matter. There can only be one per turn. No more than 4 object cards can be summoned during battle, apart from what a warrior holds in their hands. Perhaps that is poorly phrased. No more than 4 object cards can be on the battlefield at any given time per warrior other than what they hold in their hands. So if you wish to play another object card and you have 6 total, 2 in your hand and 4 other objects that are remaining on the battlefield, you must remove one before you can play one. All objects remain on the battlefield by default unless otherwise stated by the card. In each hand there can be only one object held at a time unless an object card says otherwise. Once an object leaves the battlefield, it is sent to the shelf unless it says otherwise. If something is dropped out of hand, that object is sent to the shelf. Other important mechanics I would like to touch on: remain, flip, bomb, burn, double strike, and enchant. When a spell or action has an effect that does not go to the shelf after use and instead remains on the battlefield, it will be known by the ring sigil on the More Information tablet on the card's face. What I mean by this is the ovals I mentioned above the text box, where you'll find the critical hit chance number you need to land on. The one on the very left is going to be where the ring sigil would be, and the other information types. When a card has a flip sigil in that information slot, it means it has a spell that can be activated by a flip. To flip, you must place the card face down on that side, on the side of the mat where you place your Kare. Keep it separated and clearly visible to your opponents. If your opponent so chooses, they could sacrifice 2 Kare, meaning they send that Kare to the void and the Eather. They sacrifice 2 Kare to send your face down card, whatever it may be, to the shelf. Or if the card reads that it goes to the void instead of the shelf, it does that instead. If a card has the sigil of a bomb, it can be played at any time, given that you have the resources. But if you should choose to unleash a bomb card that attacks your opponent, it does not count as another action focus if you've already had your action focus. Bomb cards can be played during your opponent's turn, and if you so choose, your own turn. And bomb cards can be played at any time, as mentioned. During your settling focus, or either one. Though you might attack before or after your action focus, you only get 1 action focus. If you play other attacks during your first settling, you've just declared your action focus. What I'm saying here is, if you start your turn and you play a bomb, your opponent can respond if they have the resources. And if you play your bomb and another action card that isn't a bomb, you've just declared your action focus and you can't go down to placing objects until your action focus is completed, objects or Kare. If you've ended your action focus and unleash a bomb, your opponent treats it like another attack, if it is one, meaning they can counter, but you cannot counter since your action focus has finished unless your counter is another bomb. They may counter attack, but if you have no other bomb cards, there is nothing you could do but block, should you have the resources. Burn. If a card has burn, that means if the attack is successful, it causes an after damage directly to the health points to the opponent once again. A burn effect is unblockable unless the card states otherwise. Successful damage means it's been done to the health of the opponent. For burn to be dealt to the opponent, all damage of the spell must be successful damage unless it states otherwise. So if I deal a fire or ice or lightning spell that does 4 points of damage, and with burn of 2, all 4 points of damage must be health damage. If they are, the opponent is dealt another 2 damage. That is burn. The burn that is dealt right to the opponent will be written for every spell with it. What I simply mean by this is, if a spell has burn, the burn damage will be written down. It is not one standard burn damage. It is different per card. Double strike is identical to burn, except that it happens with weapons or attacks. Enchanting. Just like I said, certain things aren't set in stone, such as the deck amount. Enchanting is still being worked on, and even though playtesting has not started, I've already changed the way this would work. The other rules, consider them set in stone, but the ones that I specifically call out, they are not. So we'll just go over the new way of enchanting. So, to enchant, you need 3 things: an object to enchant, the spell you want to enchant that object with, and the care needed for the spell. The object to enchant, the object must have been played onto the battlefield, or it is already there. So you need to play it that turn, or it's already been there. Playing, skip that, okay. The spell that you choose must be elemental magic. You cannot enchant with spiritual magic. If you have the resources, the care for the spell, now you must use that care to bond the spell to the object, enchanting it. So, once you have chosen your object and your elemental magic, and you have the care needed to bond them, which is the care needed to cast the spell, you won't have to spend that care twice. So if you have the spell in your hand and you wish to play it on the field, and then you wish to enchant the object with it, you don't have to pay that cost twice. Let's say it costs 3 care to cast a fire spell that does 3 damage. You don't have to pay 3 to put it on the field and pay 3 to bond it. You don't. You just pay the bonding and the enchanting cost, which is the care cost on the spell card. But if you should bond an object, enchant it with a spell from your shelf, the bonding and enchanting cost is what it costs to get it from the shelf. Whatever the enchanting cost for the care is whatever it costs to play the spell at the time. So you take the spell and you put it under your object card, and you take the care you used to bond and enchant and you put it under the object card as well. That care is now unusable for anything but that, and you've kind of sacrificed that care as well. So when you wish to enchant, keep that in mind. But now, every turn, once per turn, that object has an elemental spell attached to it that you can use to send at your opponent. Let's say I want to bond a fireball doing 5 damage of fireball to my sword, which already did 5 damage of attacking. So now I can attack with my sword with a simple slash and do 5 damage, and then also a fireball doing 5 damage once per turn. If an object is disenchanted or removed from the battle some other way, all components of it are sent to the void, and there are no exceptions. So if I enchant my sword, someone disenchants it or uses a spell to remove it from the battlefield, the spell, the object isn't sent to the shelf, and neither is the spell. The object, the care, and the spell are sent to the void. The care is placed in the void pile just like everything else, but that care is still sent to the Eather, those physical care cards. So is the care cost written on the spell card you use to enchant. It's sent to the Eather, and the object has no care cost, so nothing is, it just remains in the void and unplayable from there. How does your opponent disenchant your enchantment? They also have to sacrifice the care that you use to enchant your object. So if you used 5 care to enchant a fire spell to a sword, they sacrifice 5 care into the void, and they disenchant your object. These intentions must be clearly announced, and if successful, not only is all your care sent to the void and the Eather, so is their care. So enchanting and disenchanting have a likely chance of leading to natural events. Keep that in mind when using. Alright, and thank you. The Alpha Starter decks will be available soon. I can't wait to hear what you think. Please leave comments in the comments section. And any questions I will answer, please feel free. Thank you so much for watching and for listening, and I'll see you soon.